Fox's Gary Baumgarten reports.
Shirley McCallery is sick and tired of hearing bad news about St. John, New Brunswick. So the city's deputy mayor is calling for a 4-month ban on negative news. It's time, she argues, that the news media instead concentrate on the port city's great quality of life. She's not just aiming at reporters. She wants city council members to stop saying bad things about the city as well. A notorious murder and refinery explosions have been dominating St. John's news cycle of late.
Senator Orrin Hatch is calling it quits after more than 37 years in the U.S. Senate, but he turned a few heads with what he said in his farewell speech from the Senate floor. Steve Jordahl has that story.
The Utah Republican said one of his proudest accomplishments was passing the Religious Freedom Restoration Act, which President Bill Clinton signed into law in 1993. But then Orrin Hatch said that he thought the religious community, he's Mormon, and homosexual activists need to find compromise and stop opposing one another.
I believe we can find substantial common ground on these issues that will enable us to both safeguard the ability of religious individuals to live their faith and protect LGBTQ individuals from invidious discrimination.
Then he gave his parting wish for the Senate.
As one of my final acts as a U.S. Senator, I challenge my colleagues to find a compromise on this crucially important issue, a compromise that is true to our founding principles.
But AFA Vice President Walker Wildman says Christians didn't start this fight and are not out to get anybody or to punish people or suppress their constitutional rights.
Christians historically have been nice to everybody, even people of the opposite faith. I mean, that's what we do, is we reach out to people who don't know Jesus Christ.
He says having Christian beliefs and believing in the Bible is somehow wholly unacceptable in today's American culture.
At the end of the day, homosexual activists want to punish Christians for our beliefs, and they want everyone to give a hat tip to their lifestyle.
I'm Steve Jordahl.
A Kansas judge considers blocking a ban on telemedicine abortions. Here's Fox's Jeff Manasso.
Telemedicine abortions allow women in rural areas to get abortion pills without an in-office consultation in a city clinic, though a ban on telemedicine abortion starts January 1st unless a judge in Wichita, who hears arguments today, approves an abortion rights group's request to stop it. The Center for Reproductive Rights contends the ban violates the state's constitution, though if allowed, doctors would have to be physically present when a woman takes the abortion pills. Jeff Manasso, Fox News.
Thousands of students are getting some loan forgiveness. Fox's Anna Wells has details.
U.S. Education Department is erasing federal loans for some 15,000 former students. The agency will start forgiving some $150 million in student debt under an Obama-era rule. It wipes out loans for students whose college closed before they could graduate. Education Secretary Betsy DeVos has called the rule bad policy. The loans are being forgiven after a federal judge ruled that DeVos was unlawfully delaying it. She still plans to replace the rule, but it could be 2020 before any new rule takes effect. Anna Wells, Fox News.
In conservative magazine The Weekly Standard is closing down after 23 years. The publisher, Clarity Media Group, is citing fewer subscribers as the reason. The Weekly Standard was often critical of President Donald Trump. Founded by Bill Kristol and Fred Barnes and backed by media mogul Robert Murdoch's News Corp in 1995, it was acquired by Clarity Media Group in 2009. Clarity's president and chief executive officer said in a statement that the magazine had double-digit declines in its subscriber base all but 1 year since 2013. Denver-based Clarity also owns the Washington Examiner magazine, weekly magazine Colorado Politics, and daily newspaper Colorado Springs Gazette. And that's all our time for this hour. For more news and information, visit onenewsnow.com.
Family is an institution set forth by God, one man and one woman for life, with the outflow being children produced by that union. It's obvious to all that there is an attack on the family in our country, and especially on fathers. Whether it's the cycle of sin that persists in our families or the pressure from our government to exclude men from being intimately involved, the strategic battle is on for the souls of men. Join us in the battle to strengthen fatherhood. UrbanFamilyTalk.com.
She's sharp, pointed, and insightful. This is Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
You had McCabe, who himself was fired for lying to investigators, encouraging Flynn to not have a lawyer, basically setting him up.
The president is committed to protecting every single American citizen. He knows that without border security and without borders, you have no country at all.
The challenge here is we know the problem with border security. We need our borders strong, secure, especially with the caravan and others. So then what the president's saying is, I want a deal.
The Democrats are fighting for illegal aliens. Donald Trump is fighting for American citizens. That's what this whole thing's about.
And now, Stacey Washington.
Well, happy Friday. Guess what? You may be feeling a bit down. Well, you won't be when you get done listening to today's program. We are going to cover news and information, politics, culture, all from the Christian worldview here on Stacey on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk. And we're going to do it while keeping an upbeat attitude. I'm absolutely so over looking at all of the news and seeing nothing but negativity, not just negative news as in crime and that type of thing, but really negative news that ignores the good things that are going on in this country and that are being done by the Trump administration. And so if you listen to a lot of CNN and MSNBC, first thing I want to say is stop. Don't do that to yourself. And number two, they're lying to you. They're trying to convince you that the only answer to any problem that might be existing somewhere in the known universe is to put Donald Trump in jail. Not only is he not going to jail, he hasn't done anything wrong. So I haven't been really hammering it home all week because in my mind, when I listen to all of the different accusations against the president of the United States right now, what I'm hearing is a lot of this. And if you can't hear that in the microphone, that's me waving my fingers around like a talking. But no, it's a lot of nothing, a lot of garbage. And I prefer not to pay attention to garbage. I prefer to address myself to the larger, weightier issues or the lighter, more fun issues, whichever those might be. So welcome into the program. Thank you for being here today. Best listening audience in the known world, American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk. Go to afr.net and urbanfamilytalk.com to find out more about what we do and to support us with your likes, comments, and subscribe buttons. So do that for us and keep us in business over here. And then what are we going to have on the show today? Well, we have Amber Athey. She's a media and breaking news reporter for the Daily Caller. Fantastic guest. We love having her on. She's going to come on and talk to us about the White House battle and some other things she's been working on over at thedailycaller.com. And then we're going to talk about Tom Perez saying church has too much influence on voters. You know I have words. Oh, I have words for that potty mouth man. How is he going to fix his mouth to basically put his mouth on Christians and act as if there's something wrong with us being single issue voters? If you're a single issue voter, you get my big air high five from way over here in the Midwest, wherever you might be, because that's where the rubber meets the road. That's where you've gone in and the Lord has said to you, I don't want you voting for this. And you heard him, and instead of being a little backslidden, unredeemed, finger and fist up in the air towards God, basically disobedient little unbeliever, instead you said, you know what, Lord, I feel that. I understand, and I will obey. I am not voting for someone who doesn't stand in the right position on life. And if it's that simple for us as Christians, because really it is, then Tom Perez's problems are bigger than he even can articulate. So we'll get into that in just a minute. We'll also be delving into some information from Market Watch, which it's an indictment upon all of us because we all eat out, that we're spending too much money on eating out and it's making us fat and broke. And I mean, I was reading it and thinking, it's Friday, but I still got to share it. So we'll be talking about that as well. And we'll take your calls. Best callers in the world, 866-963-2037, 866-963-2037. Let's get into this. This is going to kind of weave in with my daily confession today, this audio. So first I want you to hear Tom Perez. He's speaking to a group of donors and activists, and he's talking about the way that Democrats can win moving forward, because their hope is to have a complete reversal of fortunes in 2020, taking back the Senate, taking the White House, so that they can reinstitute their command and control structure over our social fabric of our lives while out taxing every other state and nation, and they just want to obliterate all of the success that Donald Trump has been able to achieve with less regulation and lower taxes and other things. They have a whole agenda of things that none of them are good. It's like everybody's sitting around thinking of the worst thing that could possibly happen and then trying to figure out ways that they can make those into legislative policies. That's the Democrats right now. Bad ideas, stuff that doesn't work, but they insist on foisting it upon us. So he's discussing all of that. And then he begins to talk about how church really is the problem in his mind, and Fox News, because people just listen to it and then they do whatever it says, completely ignoring the fact that people on the right don't just sit down and listen and say, okay, who's on Fox News, who's telling me who to vote for what, and then go do that. People actually listen, they read, they look at the previous results of policies from that person or that party, and then I'm hoping, I believe what's happening is people are saying, what does God want me to do here? What does this law or this proposed rule or this agency or whatever it is that they're voting about or for, does this candidate propose that I covet what my neighbor has and use the government by force to take it? Does he propose that I use the government to take tax dollars from my neighbor to fund abortions and the snuffing out of human life? Does this person purport to want to basically obliterate our border and our national sovereignty, which is a biblical concept? And on down the line on the Democrats' platform, you can see where their party platform issues do not align with the Christian worldview. And so if a person is doing that, it's not that their church is having too much of an influence on them. It's that they're living for Christ. I'm going to get carried away before you even get to hear what he said. Look, it's number one.
And we all have to make sure that we're fluent in what's happening across our ecosystem so that we can come to each other's defense. Because we need to build a bigger orchestra. They've had a big orchestra for some time, and they've got the megaphones to amplify it. Whether it's Sinclair at a local level, Fox at a national level. I've learned this from the outreach we've done at the DNC. Why aren't we penetrating, I asked. And I had someone in northwestern Wisconsin tell me, you know what? For most of the people I know, their principal sources of information are Fox News, their NRA newsletter, and the pulpit on Sunday. And it should come as a surprise to no one that our message doesn't penetrate. It should come as a surprise to no one that that person has elevated the issue, of course, to the top, because that person on the pulpit is saying, ignore everything else that this person has done and is doing. We have to focus on one issue of Roe versus Wade. And people buy it because that's their only source. So as we move forward here, we've got to talk about these substantive ideas, but we've got to talk about a broader communication strategy. We've got to talk about other reforms that are going to enable us to elect Democrats up and down the ticket so that we can actually have the capacity to implement it.
Now, there's a few things to unpack here. First of all, when he says that their pastor is saying, ignore the other things that this person has done, I've yet to hear a pastor say that. And in today's media age, where almost every pastor in America now has a live stream or a YouTube or someplace on their website where you can go and listen to their past sermons, it is pretty easy to find out whether or not pastors are saying, ignore, let's say, Claire McCaskill, who just lost bigly, to use Donald Trump's term, here in Missouri. Did she lose because of abortion, or did she lose because she was just too radical for the show me staters? Was it people consulting with what their pastor said, or was it their exhaustion with her continual obsession with raising taxes, funding abortion, and not taking care of our southern border? Was it because they felt like she was really playing us as Missourians with her? She would put up these little events. I'm meeting with veterans. I'm having a veteran roundtable. She tried to act like she was the veteran's best friend, but she had nothing to do with cleaning up the scandal at the VA. And every opportunity she's had to show me staters, the people of Missouri, that she's on our side when it comes to funding issues, infrastructure, anything that has to do with anything that impacts your daily life. She was too busy rubbing Barack Obama's shoulders and smiling into the camera and trying to sound like a regular person when she was flitting around in her private jet and doing stuff that rich people do, which, you know, do you. You be a rich person if you're a rich person, but don't pretend you're not a rich person. Just be who you are and promote the policies that you promote. And then if you're elected, good for you. And if you're not, bye-bye. This man, Tom Perez, in saying that people are getting their NRA newsletter, well, there's a reason why you get an NRA newsletter. I know when I get mine, I'm getting it because I'm a Second Amendment supporter. And I want to know what the National Rifle Association has to say about issues of the day. It's informative. It doesn't mean I do whatever the newsletter says. The newsletter rarely says you have to do this. What they say is, on this particular issue, there's going to be a vote. Make sure and call your congressperson if you agree that this should be X or it should be Y. The Democrats do that too. For him to say that they don't have enough of an influence, that they need to widen out their reach for their messaging, ignores the fact that they control all of the media. And the truth is not in them. They constantly seek to run after evil. They constantly seek to promote policies and force other people, just regular, everyday Americans, they have to force us against our will to participate in their lawlessness and their sin. It'd be one thing if Planned Parenthood was 100% private funded and they were doing abortion, and of course it is the law of the land right now that it's allowed, but that they would say, you know what, it's legal, and we're going to fight to keep it legal, but we don't want anybody who doesn't want to have anything to do with it to pay for any of it. If you don't want to have anything to do with abortion, you stay away from it. Don't have an abortion, and certainly don't help us pay for any. We got our own stuff. That's a position you could at least say, well, at least they're not trying to subvert the will of people who are just absolutely opposed to abortion. But that's not it. If they were saying transgenderism isn't a mental illness, and so therefore we want to have rights for transgendered people, but we don't want anybody who has a religious objection to be impacted by this because we understand that this is a free country, at least that's a position you could say, well, it's honorable for them to believe what they believe, but not try to force it on other people. But on every issue, whether it's homosexual marriage, homosexual rights, transgender rights, and all the other rights that are coming, because they're all coming, when you open the door, you're not going to let in a little bit of air. It's all coming in. When you take a teaspoon of medicine, you can try to dribble just a little bit in, but you're going to get more than you're trying to dribble in because it's a teaspoon. You're going to get something akin to a teaspoon, a little less, not more. We're going to get what we open the door to. And they're opening the door wide as they can, and they're trying to force it down our throats. It'd be one thing if we saw Democrats literally doing GoFundMe accounts and saying, I'm going to sponsor this many refugees. They're going to come live in my town, in my gated community, in my exclusive AAA rated school district with the tiny little school buildings and small class sizes and high test scores. We're going to bring in this many refugees, this many illegal immigrants. We're going to make sure that they're housed and schooled right here in our neighborhood because we want to take care of them. That would be different. Instead, they're bent on radically adjusting the makeup of the demographics of this country so that they can ensure that they win elections because they can't win on the issues. And then when people who are church going, who do understand what the Word of God says, who do subscribe to an absolute truth and absolute lie type of a mental ethos, then those people are well, they're influenced by their church or Fox News. They just do what Fox News says. Well, when do you have a chance to look at Fox News when you're busy working the first 4 months of the year to pay your taxes, and then the rest of the year you're battling the liberals at your school building so they can't teach your kid how to put a condom on a banana? When do you have even time to listen to any Fox News? And if you are listening to it, most people that I know, and I know a lot of conservatives, I don't mind telling you, they listen to whatever media outlet they're listening to with an ear for the truth. And the minute they hear something that doesn't compute, that it doesn't comport with what they know to be the truth, they're out. So the reason you see Fox News dominating in the ratings is not because people are just blindly like sheep listening to it. It's because they're putting out content that you can't get someplace else because CNN no longer just reports the news. Most of their programming is opinion. Same thing with MSNBC. It was created to shape opinion. Ask Mika Brzezinski. And we will be talking about her as well. Because a double standard with her is just, it's rife, it's rampant, it's crazy that she's getting away with making a homophobic slur and Kevin Hart lost his Oscar gig. Now, I don't think he's really that upset about losing it because the man is making money hand over fist with those voiceovers in the cartoon movies. But the point is there's a double standard. So, for Tom Perez, I'm glad he understands that a lot of us read our Bibles, but we don't answer to a church or to Fox News or to the NRA. We answer to the Most High. And at the judgment seat, Tom Perez is going to be in for a rude awakening. I won't, but he will. All right, when we get back, we'll have Amber Athey, media and breaking news reporter for the Daily Caller. Keep it here.
Here's Walker Wildman for Redeem Clean Laundry Products.
not only do you get a great product and you get to obviously clean your clothes, get the stains out and use a multi-surface cleaner to clean your countertops and use the dryer sheets. You're doing all of this, and the money's going to support the work of American Family Association.
Redeem Clean laundry products were developed by Athey supporters Lynn Ingram and Jim Duncan to assist in funding the mission of the American Family Association. Redeem Clean products work as well as or better than other products on the market. They're environmentally safe, biodegradable, and they're made right here in the United States.
The great thing about Redeem Clean is not only is the product great, but it goes to support a great cause, and that is the work of American Family Association.
For clean laundry and a cleaner society, it's Redeem Clean. Visit redeemclean.afastore.net.
Hi, I'm Crawford Loritz with a Legacy Moment. I have two older sisters, and growing up, we had our share of sibling rivalry. Usually, when they told me to do something, I ignored them. It's a true confession, but I was a typical boy. However, whenever they prefaced the statement with "Mom said" or "Dad said," not only did they have my attention, but I realized I'd better do what they were asking me to do, or there would be serious consequences. They were acting as representatives of my parents, and they were under the authority of another. As Christians, we have no right or authority to approach God except through Jesus Christ. Let me say that again. As Christians, we have no right or authority to approach God except through Jesus Christ. Not only is Jesus our means of salvation, he is our ongoing daily representative to the Father. He is pleading our case before the Father, and he is providing access to God's heart and riches. Listen to these words in John chapter 16, verses 23 and 24. Truly, truly, I say to you, whatever you ask of the Father in my name, he will give it to you. Until now you have asked nothing in my name. Ask, and you will receive, that your joy may be full. Notice that the asking comes under the authority of Jesus Christ. We approach God not based upon what we bring to the table, not based upon who we are, but we approach God based upon who Jesus is, what he's done, and what he continues to do as our representative before God. Here's what I want you to remember today. Everything we do in the Christian life is because of Christ and through Christ. We approach our Heavenly Father under the authority of Christ. And in fact, the only way we have access to God is through Jesus Christ.
More information about the ministry of Crawford Loritz can be found online at livingalegacy.org.
Welcome back to Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Welcome back to the show. I am so excited to speak to our next guest. I love my guests on this show. I don't know if you can tell, but I love my guests. And I also enjoy their perspectives for the work that they do, you know, their day jobs. They don't just do radio interviews. But it's always a pleasure to speak to someone who's on the cutting edge and is doing the thing that needs to be done, especially with media and journalism. And so Amber is one of those people. She's a media and breaking news reporter for the Daily Caller. Also, she's an editor for one of their divisions, I believe. Amber, thank you for joining the show.
Thanks for having me, Stacey.
All right, let's talk about this. You've got this White House battle. I wanted to get your take on two things. First off, the White House battle that just went on. I saw you have a piece up at the Daily Caller kind of giving your take on what happened there and reporting on that. And then also, I would love to pick your brain on this Mika Brzezinski thing where she gets to use a homophobic slur and make an apology, but not to the person she slurred. But, you know, Kevin Hart, he's not hosting the Oscars because of tweets from like at least 10 years ago that he already apologized for.
Right. And if you consider what would happen to a conservative commentator who made a comment like this, they would have been pulled off the air immediately. And CNN can't even keep a Trump supporter on their network as a contributor because anytime they say anything even vaguely offensive, people boycott. They try to, call their advertisers and tell them to pull advertising from shows. That's something that Media Matters did to Laura Ingraham and to Sean Hannity when they said things that they didn't like, let alone anything bigoted or offensive. So to see Mika Brzezinski basically walk out of this scot-free with, a half apology I think is really disappointing because it shows the double standard that exists in the way that conservatives are treated in the media versus liberals.
Yeah, but the thing with this story, and I agree with you on everything you just said, but the interesting note here is that Kevin Hart is he's got Trump derangement syndrome. He's got it bad. He's been at award ceremonies and he's said horrible things about Trump. I mean, he has. And he's the voice of that adorable rabbit. I don't know if you've seen it, The Secret Life of Pets, the animated movie. And there's a rabbit in that movie that's a deranged, homicidal rabbit. And it's the cutest cartoon character ever. It is so cute. And his voice, because he is a petite little man, but he has a man voice. He voices this rabbit. And it is so funny. Like, if you want to just be crying, laughing, you just pull up some clips of that movie where he's voicing the rabbit, talking about, oppressing other animals or killing them or whatever. And he's giving the animals nicknames while he's threatening them. And it's just hilarious. So this is Kevin Hart. He's made buku dollars off of not just that movie, but a number of movies where it's either live, where, it's an action movie where he's in it, or he's voicing over. He's very popular. He's very mainstream, and nobody cares what he tweeted 10 years ago. And nobody cares that he said he doesn't want his son to be, a homosexual. Nobody cares about that. Most parents don't want their kids to be homosexuals. That maybe they won't go on TV and say it or tweet it, but they do feel that way. I believe parents love their kids no matter what situation they're in. But if you ask what they want for their child, the tweets that he expressed were not out of the mainstream. They weren't then, and they're not now. So this idea that this leftist, Kevin Hart is a leftist, he's a Democrat, he hates Donald Trump, and they still took him down.
Right. I mean, apparently you can never be woke enough for these people. They're always going to find some reason to discard you. And the sad part is that the outrage mob does this as soon as people are at the height of their fame. When he, achieved this lifelong dream of being invited to host the Oscars. And then recently there was another young man, I forget his name, but he was the Heisman Trophy winner. And as soon as he won the trophy, there were journalists who went back digging into his old tweets. They found one that included a gay slur, and it was something that he wrote when he was 14, 15 years old, which any sane, rational person is going to say, obviously you've grown as a person since then. We're not going to judge you by things that you wrote when you were maybe a freshman in high school. But it's like these people are so sad and bitter and I guess jealous of other people's success that they feel the need to tear them down as soon as they reach the pinnacle of their careers.
That's an interesting one. 14 years old and you're tweeting. How could that be held against you? 14. You're so different between 14 and 16. It's like two different people, let alone 14 to adulthood. I mean, you're talking about, that's like 6 people ago for him. I don't know how old he is, but it's at least 6 versions of himself ago, him being 14 from any point in his life. You're not the same person.
Yeah, I can't even imagine people judging me for the things that I did when I was 14 years old. And gosh, it makes me sad that kids now, and I was, I guess, part of this generation, started this generation, where everything that we do is on social media, and we're encouraged to post so many personal things about ourselves on social media. And then later on, as we're going for jobs or if we become public figures, that stuff gets held against us. And I think kids should be really careful about what they're putting on the internet, because people will try to use it to destroy you.
Well, my advice, because we have teenagers, is that honestly, if you're on Facebook or Instagram or anything like that as a young adult, and I really think those accounts are better for kids who are 17, 18 years old and up from there. And then if you are on there, it should be non-political postings. These should be, basically think of it as I'm putting out a little advertisement for myself for colleges or for future jobs. And your posting should be in that vein. No politics, no angry, discussions, no diatribes, and certainly no tweets where you insult other people. But I'm just wondering why kids of 14 need to be on Twitter at all. Why does a kid need? I understand the Instagram accounts because you can share pictures with other people and post your exploits in your high school sports or your college sports or whatever. But why do you need a Twitter account? Twitter is the worst medium for even-keeled normal discussion. Like it's rare. It's mostly just cat fights and mudslinging. And then for Facebook, with the amount of problems they've had keeping their platform safe, I mean, if you're already on there, you're already exposed. But if you're not on there and you're a kid, why would a parent say, yeah, you can get a Facebook page? It's just not even worth it.
Right. I don't think it's a good idea either. It can only cause trouble. People should wait till late as possible to allow their kids on this platform. And I just want to go back to the Mika Brzezinski thing really quick, because I know we got a little bit off topic. But I think the reason that she's not going to face any judgment or pressure or any consequences for what she said is because she is a host on one of the most prominent mainstream talk shows in the country, and the people who would normally report on this kind of thing, if a conservative said it, want to go on her show. And they know that if they come out and start criticizing Morning Joe, start criticizing Mika Brzezinski, guess what? They're not going to be invited on as guests, and so they're protecting their own careers, and I think it's as simple as that.
Well, you know what? I have criticized her and Morning Joe. They're never going to have me on there, and I don't
I don't
care.
think I'll be invited either.
Yeah, Amber, well, I don't know. You could possibly, I think you could possibly get on to, I went on to Al Sharpton, his Sunday show, and he had some reporter watching that did this story about how he fact-checked me. And when I realized that it was kind of a setup, they had me on so he could make the line that he made, and then the person could write the article about fact-checking me, that is not what he did. They've since asked me to come back, and I said no. And I've been asked to go back on CNN, and I said, your audience is too rude and hateful for me to come on your platform. Now, mind you, getting a gig as a CNN contributor means you need to go on there, right? You have to go on there a bunch of times, and then they get used to you, and then they give you a contributor job, and it pays very well. But it's not worth it to me to go on there, let alone work my way up into the contributor realm. There's some stuff you just have to kind of say, am I willing to lay myself down and be run over by a train once or twice a week for the next year? Or do I just want to live? And so career-wise, who cares? Who cares if it's a boost for my career or not? I'm not going to do it because these are not good people. These are not people that, like Mika Brzezinski, the thing that she said that was the homophobic slur. So first of all, I believe if you're insulting someone, it's an insult. It doesn't matter if it's in the way of their race or their sexual choices or whatever. It's an insult. And so if you're being insulting, that's not as professional as she could be. But it's not a job ender, in my opinion. It's not a job ender. I don't think people should lose their jobs over it. But by the same token, I don't think Kevin Hart should have lost his opportunity over 10-year-old tweets. But I do notice that Kevin Hart's black, and he's on the left, and very few people came to his rescue. But for Mika, everyone just kind of sat back quietly and didn't say anything, as you said, and then waited for her to make that. Really, it's a non-apology. And now they've moved on. And the rest of us can keep talking about it, but what matters is she's moved on from it. She's going to keep on doing what she does. And it's also because of not just the show itself. Obviously, people want to go on it, but it's because she's now married to Joe Scarborough. And she and Joe have made a name for themselves as being opposing Donald Trump. And so she's kind of untouchable now.
Yeah, I think that's true. And to your point about the apology, she didn't even apologize to the person she insulted, which was, of course, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. She apologized to the gay community and to her audience, but she never apologized to the target of her remarks. And then shortly thereafter, she went on to use the incident to attack Trump. So it's hard for me to believe that her apology was really genuine. And I'm with you. I don't think it's a career ender. I'm not really in the vein of trying to fire people when they make one mistake on their job or they say one thing that perhaps goes too far. And I think conservatives are way more consistent on that than liberals are, sometimes to our detriment because we don't have these outrage mobs that get people on the left fired. And unfortunately, the left does do that to conservatives. But I totally agree. I don't think we should be trying to destroy people's lives over, a mistake or something like that.
That's true. So there's been a lot of discussion about the White House battle, as we're calling it. And the left says that Pelosi wore a red jacket that now needs to be reissued by the designer for next year. So 2019 will be the year of this kind of orangish red. It's a beautiful coat, jacket that Nancy wore as she slid her shades on walking out of, because they do all of this stuff as like media opportunities. I can't tell you how many times I noticed that Barack Obama would be somewhere and he would make a certain motion, and then that motion or that whatever it was, it would be a GIF or it would be a meme or it would be something that people would be talking about on Twitter. And then that's the news story. The reason we're focusing on Nancy Pelosi's coat and shades, and she did cut a fine form. I mean, a nice coat on a woman, especially if you pair it with she had the nude shoes on. She did the outfit justice. She did well. But the reason we're focusing on her outfit, and that's trending on Twitter, is because she and that Chuck Schumer look like utter fools facing off with Donald Trump when he told them that they're against border security and that they need 10 votes from the Democrats and the Democrats won't give them. They had no answer. They looked awful.
Yeah, I agree. I think the meeting absolutely went on in Trump's favor, especially when you consider that they, Pelosi and Schumer, were hypocritical the entire time on two fronts. Mm-hmm. One, they claimed that they didn't want to shut down the government, which they did last year, which it was rightfully dubbed the Schumer shutdown, after Trump said that he wouldn't approve a deal exchanging DACA for border funding. And then, two, they kept talking in the press conferences after this meeting about how they wanted transparency, yet during the meeting they kept urging President Trump not to speak about this in front of the cameras and for them to have this negotiation behind closed doors. And Trump said, no, I want to have this out in the open. I believe in border security. I want funding for the wall. And if you don't give it to me, I'm going to shut the government down. And it's as clear as day right there in his words in front of cameras. No one can go back on that. And Pelosi and Schumer have never been in a political situation like that before. Trump, of course, grew up on reality TV. This is sort of his battle zone. This is where he really thrives. And for anyone to say that Pelosi and Schumer came out winning that meeting is just the opposite of reality.
It's the same as when in high school the popular girl finally gets her comeuppance from the girl she's been bullying or the girl whose boyfriend she stole or whatever. And so other people who know that the popular girl is still going to be the popular girl at the end of this comeuppance, this is just a tiny dip, they focus on how beautiful she is or how she's going to be the homecoming queen or something like that, and they deflect away from the issue to save face because they've just seen someone that they're terrified of get taken down a strong peg. That's what this is.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think you're totally right. And, of course, the media wants to continue their love affair with Nancy Pelosi. They don't want to get on her bad side because the media has become essentially an arm of the Democratic Party. So in order to avoid criticizing how she handled the meeting, it's a lot easier to just make the viral moment about her clothing choices and her hand motions.
Which you have to give it to her. She knew she'd be walking out of that. She's a...
Yeah, and she looks great to her credit.
Yes, she's a seasoned political operator, and she's a media maven. She's very good at manipulating the media types. Sometimes I've seen her on shows where the person will go off script and they'll ask her a question that's actually kind of substantial. You know, they'll ask her something. And she's not there to talk about issues. She's not there to talk about legislative priorities or anything like that. And she'll deflect away. But while she's doing it, she'll kind of insult them. Like once she said to one of the nighttime hosts, she said, you know what? That sounds like a great question, but the people here in this audience they don't have me here to talk about that kind of stuff on a night like tonight. I'm here to have a good time. I'm here to talk to you. I'm here for us to, have a good exchange. I'm not here to talk about that type of issue. And then she turned to the audience and she kind of did her hands in like a little bunny rabbit motion, like, everybody clap or, join me. And she smiled and nodded like to the whole audience. And then they erupted in applause, and then they moved on to another subject. I mean, this woman is good at this stuff. So she knew this might not go well with this bombastic, almost crazy pants man. He's used to this. He loves the cameras. So I better make sure I have on something awesome so I can get that look on the way out. And she executed it to perfection, and the little dunderheads just fell right into her trap.
Yeah, I criticize Pelosi a lot. I obviously don't agree with her on a whole lot, but she is very politically savvy. Just look at the way that she handled the challenge for Speaker of the House for the new Democratic Congress.
Perfect.
She didn't have the votes. There were about 15 Democrats who were willing to oppose her speaker nomination and nominate an alternative candidate. And
Amber, we're out of time. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll be right back with more.
Physical activity is the new trend. It's not a bad thing unless it has brought a sense of vanity in your life. 2 years ago, I was not happy with the number on the scale, nor how I looked. I've never been a huge person, but I was, as the old folks would say, healthy. I joined a gym, gained a personal trainer, even changed some of my eating habits. The Lord checked me one day and in my spirit said, "Why are you disgusted with yourself? Be healthy, take care of the temple I've loaned you, but do it because you want to honor this body, which is your responsibility while on this earth." I said, "You better let me know, Abba." Psalms 139 verse 14 says, "I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that full well." 15 pounds down, I know that even if I was to never look like Serena Williams with those nice framed, worked out arms, I am wonderfully made in his image, and so are you. With a heart for the urban family, I'm today's urban woman, Victory McIntosh. Connect with us more at urbanfamilytalk.com.
When I got home, I wanted to be part of the whole Christmas experience, not just Dad sitting in his easy chair drinking coffee, watching it happen, but actually I'm going to be a participant in helping decorate the tree, helping wrap presents, helping all those things, decorating the house. It's hard to put into words. The time is precious.
Hey, somebody hand me the scissors.
When he came home last year, we wanted to make it extra special since he'd missed Christmas before and did the presents, and we were just, everything seemed a little bit bigger and a little bit more exciting because Dad was there now to be able to enjoy it with us, and the girls were very excited about that.
Urban Family Talk salutes our men and women in uniform and their families for the sacrifices they make on behalf of freedom.
When you're away from your family over any holiday or birthday or anything, but especially Christmas, it makes you think how important and how precious time is to spend with one another.
Merry Christmas from Urban Family Talk.
Military Matters.
This is a 1943 Douglas DC-3.
This plane, one of the most important pieces of equipment during World War II, actually flew in the D-Day invasion.
It was loaded up with 14 brave paratroopers and a crew of 4.
Brandon Jewett is an airline pilot and aviation expert. He owns this plane.
It's just remarkable to think of what the airplane's done historically, and that's what's so cool.
He is actively trying to find family members of the original crew to take them along as he flies this plane back to Europe in June to be part of the 75th anniversary of the D-Day invasion.
Obviously, time is of the essence.
Brandon has the manifest of the original crew. He knows the pilot and co-pilot passed away a few years ago, but he wants to find the others or any of their loved ones.
And we'd like to allow those family members to participate, to know what their family members and how important a mission it was 75 years ago.
Deborah Takahara, Fox 31.
You can download episodes of Stacy on the Right from the podcast page on AFR.net or UrbanFamilyTalk.com. Now, back to the show on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
The president actually understands people needing a paycheck, certainly far more than Nancy Pelosi ever will, partly because he's actually signed the front of a paycheck. He knows what a paycheck means. It's why he spent so much of the first 2 years of his administration making sure more people in America get a paycheck, making sure more people have a job. The other part of that is the president has been committed to making sure we protect our borders. People can't get a paycheck if they're not around because we've had people come across and take jobs from them, or even worse, have violent crimes that have hurt Americans. The president is committed to protecting every single American citizen. He knows that without border security and without borders, you have no country at all. And he's calling on Democrats to step up and actually do their jobs and protect the American people and work with him in that process.
Wow. So that was Sarah Huckabee Sanders speaking about this whole issue of the Democrats not doing their jobs to protect the American people. And that's what it is. And anyone who tells you that it's not about the Democrats refusing to give the 10 votes so that the border wall can be funded is lying. The Democrats voted for the border wall in 2006. They wanted the border wall to be shorn up and to be something that was, honestly, we're talking about a nonpartisan issue here. And the fact that they're making it partisan and they refuse to deal on the deferred arrival on childhood, deferred action on childhood arrivals. They refuse to do anything about any issue having to do with immigration. just tells you how far away from where they were they have come, which calls into question whether or not you can support them as a Christian. Oh, yeah, I said it. It's Friday afternoon. I said it. And no amount of anger or vitriol or Trump derangement syndrome is going to make me take it back. So there it is. Sorry, not sorry. All right, we're going to take calls. We love to speak to our wonderful guests here on the program. 866-963-2037. 866-963-2037. So while we're in this last segment of the show, I want to talk a little bit about this article over at Market Watch. They start the article off, chew on this. They say that more than half of Americans confess to making a financial mistake when pursuing their financial goals this year, and the most common mistake had to do with dining out. 1 in 4 Americans confess that they dined out too much last year, according to a survey of more than 2,000 people released Thursday by the financial company Fidelity. What's more, the number one thing Americans bust their budgets on is dining out. And this is according to research released by a financial company named Principal that also released this year. So nearly 1 in 3 Americans, 29%, up from 26% last year, said that this was this year's top budget buster for them. And I encourage you to take a look. Almost every bank has the little system where once you've logged into your account, you can go over and check the little pie chart on what your spending was. And sometimes the spending is miscategorized and you have to go in and change something that was, maybe a restaurant to a gas station or vice versa. But for the most part, the algorithms are able to determine what you were buying at the store and group it into its proper category. And the reason this is important is because if you're not keeping track of this on a month-to-month basis and you're just looking at it now, you're just, tucking into your account and clicking on that pie chart, you might be shocked to see how much money you're actually spending on eating out. And if you're not a tight budgeter and you don't, keep track of every single dollar going in and going out in that way because you have disposable income, you might be surprised to see how much of your disposable income is going to that. This is what is happening, and this is why, people are underestimating how much it's costing them to eat out, to continually have, a certain number of meals out per week. So people who tend to eat out a lot tend to underestimate what it'll cost, according to a study released in 2017 that was done by Penn State. The researchers asked the participants what they thought they would spend eating out at the beginning of a 2-week period. The middle of the period, participants upped their average budget from a little under $18 in 1 week to about $55 in week 2 because they realized they were spending more money on eating out than they had anticipated. So they planned one thing, but in execution it turned out to be something completely different. What this tells the researchers is that obviously they thought they would spend less, and they realized they were spending a lot more, and then they started rationalizing the increase. The reality is that Americans are spending thousands dining out. Government data shows that in 2017, Americans spent more than $3,300 a year on dining out, and that's a 6.7% increase from the year prior. Now, remember, you want to go to the beach for a week in the summertime or in the springtime, $3,300 is way more than you need for a 2-bedroom condo. Honestly, you can get a 2-bedroom condo on the beach. Literally walk out the door of the condo and you're on the sandy beach and the water is just ahead of you for about $1,500 to $1,700 a 2-bedroom, and 5 people can stay in that. So $3,300 a year on dining out, that's a sizable sum of money. Now, it doesn't mean that they're advocating for people not to dine out at all. They're just saying that the numbers are increasing every year that they're tracking how much Americans are spending. And then it's also having another unintended consequence, which is it wreaks havoc on savings because people tend to use that disposable income and it doesn't go into the savings account. So more than the $3,300 a year, all spending at restaurants surged by the most on record this past year, and Gallup data from last year showed that 6 in 10 Americans ate dinner out at least once a week, 16% saying they did it 3 times or more a week. Dining rooms and kitchens across the U.S. are getting a little less use than they used to because Americans have embraced the experience of eating out. Not only is eating out wreaking havoc on your savings, but it may be expanding your waistline. On days when Americans eat out, they scarf an average of 200 more calories than when they eat at home. Now, I find this to be true because the servings at the restaurants are so much larger because they want to justify the price that they're charging you. I also see that the food at the restaurants it's just so much more rich. If you try to make a restaurant dish at home, you'll notice that a lot of the ingredients that are going in, you're like, well, if I want it to taste exactly like what it tastes like in the restaurant according to this all recipes recipe, then I need to put these things in. But after you've made it a couple times, you can kind of figure out, well, I could probably leave this out, or I could use this instead of that, which has less fat in it, and you can still get the same taste and experience, but you're making it at home, so it costs less, and it has fewer calories, not only because you used fewer of the high-calorie rich ingredients, but because you probably gave yourself a normal-sized plate serving, a salad plate serving, where at a restaurant, they don't even serve your food to you on a plate anymore. Now they bring you what looks like a platter, where you would normally put a whole dish, like a whole chicken or a turkey or something like that. They bring you that, and it's got food all over it, and you're supposed to eat all of that in one sitting. One thing that I know was a really high critical point or point of criticism for people during the Obama administration was that Michelle Obama and her lunch rules and food rules meant that restaurants had to put the calories on their menus. Well, I was against it, but the unintended consequence of it actually going through and happening is that now I'll sit down, like I remember the last time we were at the Cheese Factory was some weeks ago, and we sat down and there's a salad that I get from there that I always think of as being a healthy choice. Well, that salad is 1,300 calories. And so when I looked at that, I thought, wow, so if I eat half of it, it's not that bad. But remember, how many calories are you supposed to have per day? You know, so if you know how many calories are in something, and then you look at the cost of the actual meal and what it does to your budget eating out that often, and it's kind of an impulse thing. Oh, I don't know what I'm making for dinner tonight. I guess we'll eat out. Or, oh, we're coming back from basketball or whatever, you know, your kid's activity is, soccer or dance or whatever. You're coming back and you're like, oh, well, I guess we'll just pick something up. What ends up happening is picking something up busts the budget, and you end up eating way more calories than you would have if you cooked at home. So it's not that this article at Market Watch is against people eating out, but they are trying to alert people to the correlation between the extra calories that are being taken in and the lower amount of funds that are going into savings accounts. So all told, nearly 3 in 4 Americans are now either overweight or obese, according to the CDC, and that's costly. The medical cost for people who have obesity was $1,429 higher than those who are of a normal weight. Still, it's important to point out that there are plenty of other reasons Americans are overweight and don't have fat savings accounts besides dining out often. People can certainly put on the pounds and spend big when they're cooking their own foods. So it's just kind of an alert. It's kind of like, hey, you know, this is what's happening, and you can evaluate what's happening with you on your own if you're a part of the, you know, the kind of phenomenon, or maybe you're outside the phenomenon and you're doing great. You're eating healthy and you're eating out sometimes, but the majority of the time you're within your budget and your savings accounts are growing. So it's just an alert to try to keep us paying attention to something that can be an issue for Americans who are trying to watch their weight, trying to increase their savings, et cetera, et cetera. So the call lines are open still. We have a few minutes left in this segment. 866-963-2037. 866-963-2037. We are going to be doing, we have obviously live shows next week. I know a lot of people are going to be going on vacation, but do not worry. I'm going to be here. I'll be here next week. And we'll be having lots of call-ins, and we'll be talking about Christmas, and we're having a little bit lighter of shows, but obviously we will still be covering breaking news and all of the different things that are going on. So talking about the migrants in the caravan, and this to me, it's kind of upsetting, but I don't think people are going to pay attention to it. We're certainly not going to see anything about it on any of the cable news outlets, because what they want to do is they want to infer that the Border Patrol killed a 7-year-old migrant girl. She died just hours after being taken into custody of U.S. Border Patrol, but she was suffering from dehydration and exhaustion as a result of the strenuous journey from deep, South America. A 7-year-old girl. She died of dehydration and exhaustion. The Guatemalan child entered illegally into the United States with her father as a part of a huge group crossing into New Mexico. So I ask, how are these people still crossing the border when we have over 10,000 troops south of the border now? I mean, how are they still getting in, first of all? And second of all, these people are literally killing their own kids to get into America. And Democrats are defending it. Time magazine had a misleading headline, 7-year-old immigrant girl died after she was detained by Border Control. Well, first of all, she is an immigrant girl or is she a migrant? And they talk about the concerns that they have over how the child died, and that they want more scrutiny at detention centers. But it's not about the detention center. If she showed up at the border and crossed into America illegally, and she was dehydrated and exhausted from being forced to walk thousands of miles, it doesn't matter if she was held in a posh hotel or if she was held in squalid conditions. She was at death's door when she got there. What they should be doing is holding her father on child endangerment charges, negligence. So they bring her in, and to prove in their own piece that she did not actually die at the hands of Border Patrol, they talk about in the article how she suffered from seizures for just over 8 hours after being taken into custody, and then her temperature spiked to 105.7 degrees. Unbelievable. So we have time for one call, then people will have to hold over. Let's go to Randy in Missouri. Randy, thank you so much for calling the show.
Hey, Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
I wanted to chime in on the immigration issue. A lot of people have the idea that this is an organic movement, and nothing could be further from the truth. As far as the caravan's concerned, these folks had all kinds of help, logistical help, financial help, and I think the United Nations is a part of it, just like the stuff that's been going on over in Europe. There's a program within the United Nations called the United Nations Refugee Relocation Program, and there's also this compact, this United Nations Migrant Compact that a bunch of nations are signing on to right now. And through the NGOs and groups like George Soros and various other groups, church groups that are financially tied through the NGOs, these folks are being facilitated in their migration process, and it's going to spell a lot of problems for this country. As it's caused a lot of problems for Germany, Sweden, and France, as many stories have testimony to. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for the call, Randy, and you make some fantastic points there. There's no denying that it's causing hurt, harm, and danger to innocent children and people in the United States who are the victims of illegal immigrant crime. It's a bad situation all the way around, and it has to be stopped. All right, Merry Christmas, y'all. We are going to be having more Stacey on the Right after this. If you're leaving us now, God bless you from the Heartland. And you have onenewsnow.com news and information up next as well.
Urban Family Talk.
You only want to donate to biblically sound organizations. So as a federal or state employee, why not choose the American Family Association Combined Federal Campaign Designation 12037? Of the organizations on the CFC list, AFA is one of the few standing for you and your family. By choosing 12037, you help make it possible for us to continue.
Truth, wisdom, empowered urban family talk. A ministry of the American Family Association.
For American Family News, I'm Chris Woodward. The White House is dismissing accusations from President Trump's former attorney that Trump directed hush money payments to two women during the presidential campaign to buy their silence about alleged affairs. Deputy Press Secretary Hogan Gidley blasted the media today for taking Michael Cohen seriously and giving credence to a convicted criminal. His words.
Quite frankly, for the media to give credence to a convicted criminal who has lied on multiple occasions and self-admitted doing just that is quite frankly laughable. The president has maintained and has said many times he has never instructed Michael Cohen to do anything illegal, and we stand by that.
The U.S. Border Patrol says a 7-year-old girl who died while in their custody appeared to be in good health when she was first detained along a remote stretch of the U.S.-Mexico border. An intake form signed by the girl's father said that she was not sick, was not sweating, and seemed mentally alert. Immigration officials say the girl's father told officials that she was sick and vomiting on a bus heading to a Border Patrol station, but had stopped breathing by the time they arrived. It appears once conservative Christian organizations have compromised their biblical integrity in hopes of finding peace with gay activists. AFN Steve Jordahl reports.
The National Association of Evangelicals and the Council of Christian Colleges and Universities have adopted what they're calling the Fairness for All motion. It affirms marriage as the union of one man and one woman. It supports civil rights laws, the First Amendment, and religious freedom, and says homosexuals should never face violence, harassment, or discrimination. Now, that might sound good at first hearing, but Dr. Richard Land of Southern Seminary says what Big Gay thinks of as harassment and discrimination are core orthodox biblical mandates.
This is a truth serum for evangelicals. If you believe what the Bible says about homosexuality and lesbianism, then you cannot affirm it. You cannot accommodate it.
The NAE and CCCU may have felt the walls were closing in with no victory in sight as their members and schools face increasing pressure from the secular culture that celebrates sexual dysfunction. Perhaps they're putting down a stake that would get them a seat at the cultural table.
That stake's got a white flag on it. I mean, you feel the wall's closing in, so you just surrender. That's not what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to be witnesses to the truth. The answer is not to adopt the Stockholm Syndrome and identify with our cultural captors. We are to stand for the faith.
I'm Steve Jordahl.
New information on retail sales. Carol Zimmer has the numbers.
Retail sales rising 0.2% in November. While holiday sales were strong, they were offset by lower prices for gasoline. But if you strip out gas, last month's retail sales rose 0.5%. That's a positive sign for economic growth. Furniture stores, electronics stores, and health stores also enjoying a solid bump as the holiday shopping season went into full swing. Carol Zimmer, Fox News.
General Motors' massive 14,000-person layoff announced last month might not be as bad as originally thought. Fox's Jeff Manasso explains.
GM says that 2,700 out of the 3,300 factory jobs slated for elimination will now be saved by adding jobs at other U.S. factories. This just a day after President Trump, a critic of the GM plant closures, said of GM CEO Mary Barra on Fox's Outnumbered.
Not acceptable to me. And she's either going to open fast or somebody else is going to go in, but General Motors is not going to be treated well.
GM says most of the blue-collar workers sent pink slips in many cities could find employment at other GM plants, though no remedy for about 8,000 white-collar GM workers and 2,600 factory workers in Canada. Jeff Manasso, Fox News.
In final news this hour, today's national average for a gallon of regular gasoline is $2.39. That's down 5 cents from this day last year. Find more news at onenewsnow.com.
There are many ways you can listen to the shows of Urban Family Talk. One of those ways is through our very own app. Whether you have an iPhone or an Android, just go to the App Store and search for Urban Family Talk. You'll have immediate access to 24-hour programming as well as the podcast for each show. You'll be able to tune in no matter where you are. Speaking of tuning in, we have our own channel on another radio app called Tune In. Cool, right? Urban Family Talk is everywhere. Just download the app and take us wherever you go.
She's sharp, pointed, and insightful. This is Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
You had McCabe, who himself was fired for lying to investigators, encouraging Flynn to not have a lawyer, basically setting him up.
The president is committed to protecting every single American citizen. He knows that without border security and without borders, you have no country at all.
The challenge here is we know the problem with border security. We need our borders strong, secure, especially with the caravan and others. So then what the president's saying is, I want a deal.
The Democrats are fighting for illegal aliens. Donald Trump is fighting for American citizens. That's what this whole thing's about.
And now, Stacy Washington.
Welcome to the program. Thank you so much for being here. Happy Friday to ya. Guess what? We're almost time for Christmas. Yes, Christmas time. Ah, I love it. I love it. If I could, I would spend all of my time planning, executing, and attending Christmas parties, Christmas brunches, Christmas lunches, Christmas afternoons, and tree lighting ceremonies, caroling. I would only do Christmas things all the time. That's how much I'm into it. But I keep meeting people and getting to like visit at their homes. And I mean, as much as I think I'm into Christmas, these people have literally, they've lost their ever-loving minds. They're so into Christmas, and I love it. Oh my goodness, it's so much fun. And I know for some people, and I'm sorry about it, that it can be hard because maybe you don't like putting up trees, or maybe you think people go overboard, or maybe it's just, whatever the case might be. I get it. But, so enjoyable. Yes, it's so good to have the celebration of Jesus Christ's birth and all of it's just a great feeling to have people, everyone's kind of in a better mood than normal and trying harder to be nice. And I encountered someone that was at a business trying to pick up an order, and the guy was mean, and I came home and I was in a bad mood because the guy was mean. And then later I snapped out of it because I just thought to myself, it's Christmas time. I can't let this man steal my joy. I've got to still be in a good mood. And so I woke up this morning and just a little song in my heart, and I got a whole bunch of stuff done beforehand, then attended a Christmas brunch that is a tradition for a friend of mine. She and her mom have been throwing this same girlfriend's Christmas brunch for, she said, since she was a kid. Her mom used to throw it for her and her friends. And then as a grown-up, her mom would travel to her at Christmas time, after she got married, and they would throw it because it used to be at her mom's house. Now it's always at her house. And it was just so nice. I love seeing her mom and her mom's friends, and then my friend who invited me, and there's a bunch of other women there. And it was just nice to meet them and spend time and, sit with my friend and eat the delicious brunch food. So I just encourage you to find some time, carve it out to spend some time with friends, family, whoever, and to go to church and to try to absorb as much of the season as we can. Because after Christmas, it's like a no man's land until Valentine's Day. So you have all those weeks of just basically cleaning up from Christmas and dealing with the winter. And then it's Valentine's Day. So we'll get to that when it comes. But this hour we have another guest, fantastic guest. We are going to be speaking to Dave Workman. He's from the Second Amendment Foundation, the same group that gave me the 2018 Journalist of the Year, Second Amendment Foundation. He's going to come on and talk to us about the Parkland, Florida Commission report. This is a bombshell, 447 pages. So he's going to come on and tell us exactly what they recommended and how it dovetails in with what the Second Amendment Foundation has been advocating for a very, very long time. So kind of validation for them. Right now, I want to talk a little bit about Flynn. It is my opinion that not only has Flynn been railroaded, but he is being treated in the worst possible way if you think about the fact that it looks like now the DOJ kind of entrapped him. So if he did indeed lie and he was convicted of the lying, okay, but where's everybody else who's going to be prosecuted for that? Why are only Republicans being prosecuted for that? And second of all, if the Flynn matter is the impetus for the entire Mueller investigation and it turns out he was railroaded, then why are we still doing the Mueller investigation? Why is he still rooting around under chairs and acorns looking for some collusion? I don't know. So let's listen to number 2. It's Elizabeth Harrington.
In the Russia matter, I don't think the Cohen revelation of sentencing did too much to advance the narrative because he's going to prison for tax evasion. But on the Flynn matter, I think we have a lot more questions on the double standard that the FBI took in handling and going scorched earth after Trump, but kid gloves with Hillary Clinton. And I think Flynn's only crime here was going to work for a Republican president because you had McCabe, who himself was fired for lying to investigators, encouraging Flynn to not have a lawyer, basically setting him up. Then 7 months later, writing the 302 to say he lied.
7 months later.
Yes, 7 months in August when they had this meeting without lawyers present on the FBI's, convinced him to not have a lawyer present. But here you have, in the Clinton case, Paul Kambata, the IT guy who used bleach bit on the server. Investigators said they knew he was misleading them. They knew he was lying. They didn't charge him with making false statements. What did they do? They gave him immunity. And we saw that throughout the Clinton case. Kid gloves didn't go after anybody. But because Flynn was working for a Republican president, they went after him and they got him on something.
Did you hear what she said? They got him on something. So it's not about him doing anything. It's like, well, what can we do? Well, first of all, let's send him in there without his attorney. Second of all, once he gets in there without his attorney, we can talk to him and kind of massage our questions to him to make sure that we're getting, a bit of confusion from him. And then, of course, he's a general, it's not like he's some patsy, but he was set up in such a way to make it easier for them to do what they needed to do. And now they've got him. The question is, are they going to sentence him to jail time for doing things? Honestly, I don't care, except that we see only one group of people being prosecuted for this lying to Congress thing. It's as if Mueller doesn't know Hillary Clinton and Houmat Abedin and the others, Clapper, that they exist. I don't get that at all. We'll be talking about the Parkland massacre, and we'll also be going into Representative Roger Marshall. He talked about every day 10 terrorists and 40 criminals trying to cross the border, getting in through our open southern border. It's just wide open. There's just nothing stopping people from finding a place to cross over. Now, this next story, I'm really. It's like getting smacked around over and over and over again, and then you just get punch drunk and you just stop feeling it. It's another story about Facebook, the latest privacy scandal, the private photos of millions of users accidentally shared with 1,500 apps. Private photos of users accidentally shared. How is it an accident at this point? They've done it accidentally so many times. How could it possibly still be an accident? So, Facebook said it found a bug that gave as many as 1,500 third-party apps access to the unposted Facebook photos of up to 6.8 million users. The affected pictures include those posted on Facebook Stories and Facebook Marketplace, as well as those that people uploaded but never shared. So what did Facebook say in response? We're sorry that this happened. We're sorry that it happened. Sorry, not sorry. Call lines are open at 866-963-2037, 866-963-2037. We can talk about anything. It's kind of like Open Line Friday. If you want to join in and talk about any topics that are going on during this week or any new topics that we haven't yet covered on the show. So Facebook says they put it in a developer-focused blog post. They discovered a nasty bug in their photo software. And all they're getting in response is from this horrible, bug, as they're calling it, is it's sharing photos. So she says, in the article, she says, for example, if someone uploads a photo to Facebook but doesn't finish posting it, maybe because they've lost reception or walked into a meeting, we store a copy of that photo so the person has it when they come back to the app to complete their post. I mean, aren't they something? They've always got some good reason why they can do whatever they want to do. 876 app developers and 1,500 apps, and users had to give access to Facebook to access the API, and in other words, you give authorization to the app for it to access your photos, and the app then can access any of the photos that you've uploaded to Facebook. And Facebook says the bug was active for about 12 days in September. And so they say, we're sorry. Early next week, we'll be rolling out tools for app developers that will allow them to determine which people using their app might be, impacted by this bug. And they have obviously had this string of scandals. So it's like they're having these scandals about accidental sharing more than one time per year now. And I'm not talking only about the Cambridge Analytica. So here's what they recommend. You're going to get an alert on Facebook if you were one of the 6.8 million users. They're also recommending that people log into any apps with which they have shared their Facebook photos and check which photos that app has access to. And I recommend, just as a personal aside, Stacey Washington, not affiliated with Facebook, doesn't want to be anything like that you go in periodically to Facebook and Twitter and all of these different ones and check and see which apps are authorized. So I did this once on my Twitter account and found that apps that I hadn't used in like 5 years still had access to my entire Twitter account. And so all you have to do is revoke access. It's just a single click and the access is revoked. And then you have fewer exposures because, in my opinion, this is going to continue to happen. Now, there's another app called Parlay, and I want to pull it up for you. Parler News. Sorry, it's pronounced Parlay, but it's Parler News. And it's a new platform. It's named for the French word meaning to speak, parler. And many are saying it's the next logical move for those who wish to do so freely without fear of being silenced. So 2 days ago, they were actually promoting this on the Daily Caller. And I just took a cursory quick look. When you go to the website, they have a red banner across the top that says, update, Parler has surged in popularity in the last 48 hours. Service will be slow and you may receive networking areas while we work on scalability. Please bear with us. Thanks. That in and of itself tells me that people are ready for an alternative to old fake book. Or they're ready for an opportunity to have a place that they can go to where they don't have to worry about continual sharing of their personal information accidentally with this fake apology coming on the heels of it every single time. So it's Parler, P-A-R-L-E-R, home.parler.com. I'm pronouncing it that way so you can know how to spell it. But the correct pronunciation is Parlay. They have a commenting plugin. You can automatically post articles. So any article that you have posted to a website can be automatically posted to your social news application. They feature news articles and push notifications to extend conversations, and they improve the interface with plugin integration upgrades. And those are native in your native comment section. So they have a lot of information here. And there's a plugin that you can download for Apple and for Android. You can also request a demo, and you can contact their team. Let me click on the team page. Founded in 2018 and based in Henderson, Nevada. And parler is a French verb that means to speak. After being exhausted with a lack of transparency in big tech, ideological censorship, and privacy abuse, our co-founders John and Jared decided to create an alternative solution. Parlay provides a commenting and social news platform for digital publishers, influencers, bloggers, writers, politicians, and social users to share news, opinions, and content in real time. Sounds nice. We'll see where it goes, right? All right, when we get back, we'll have more for you. Stay right there.
Hello, everyone. I'm Tim Wildman, president of American Family Association and American Family Radio. 2019 is upon us, and we're going to be going back to Washington, D.C. and to Williamsburg for our spiritual heritage tours. And if you've been wanting to go, maybe this is the year for you. These tours fill up several months in advance, and one of the reasons they do is because we have an actual historian, a professional historian that comes on our tour with us. His name is Stephen McDowell. He's the president of the Providence Foundation, and he knows more about early American history, especially the Christian influence on early American history. He knows more than anybody I know. So, if you want to go with us, you can find out more information at spiritualheritagetours.com. That's in June and September. Pick the month you want to go. Find out more information at spiritualheritagetours.com. That's spiritualheritagetours.com.
This is Viewpoints with Kirby Anderson.
You know, the carol O Come, Emmanuel is an English translation of a Latin hymn that was sung during Advent and Christmas. The text goes back to at least the 18th century and perhaps much earlier, while the music goes back to the 15th century. O come, Emmanuel, and ransom captive Israel, that mourns in lonely exile here until the Son of God appear. Rejoice, rejoice, Emmanuel shall come to thee, O Israel. Emmanuel means God with us. Even before the coming of Christ, we see passages in the Old Testament that remind us that God was with Israel. In 1 Kings 8, we read, Praise the Lord who has given rest to his people Israel, just as he promised. Not one word has failed of all the wonderful promises he gave through his servant Moses. May the Lord our God be with us as he was with our ancestors. May he never leave us or abandon us. In Psalm 46, we read that the Lord of hosts is with us. The God of Jacob is our stronghold. One of the most visible reminders of God's presence was during the Exodus. God was with the Israelites as a pillar of fire by night and a pillar of smoke by day. His presence was with them in the tabernacle and later in the temple in the Holy of Holies. But the most important aspect of Emmanuel is found in the New Testament. John tells us in his gospel, the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. This is the miracle of the incarnation. God put on human flesh and came to Israel so that he might give his life for all of us. Paul writes to Timothy, here is the great mystery of our religion. Christ came as a human. This is what we celebrate at Christmas. I'm Kirby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
Take Kirby and the Point of View team with you on the go with the Point of View app. Search for Point of View Radio at the Apple or Google Play stores.
This is Stacy on the Right with Stacy Washington on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Well, you know, this is the brilliance of Donald Trump, is to put that meeting on national TV so everybody can see the dynamics of what's going on when the president tries to meet with Mr. Schumer and Ms. Pelosi. So this border is all about national security. Every day, over 10 terrorists and 40 criminals try to cross that border. Over 90% of the illicit opioids come into this country through that border as well.
Welcome to the program. Thank you for being here. That was Republican Roger Marshall saying that every day 10 terrorists and 40 criminals try to cross the border. And he was being interrogated by one of the cable news hosts who got a little bit, like you could see he was getting miffed about the fact that this was even being brought up. And he didn't want to have to listen to those kinds of facts coming out on his air, so he tried to discredit him. And he said, well, where'd you get that information? Well, from the DOJ. Well, how have they verified whether or not these people are terrorists or not? Because, like the DOJ doesn't know what a terrorist is. Come on. The DOJ knows what terrorists are, what terrorism is. Why was that even a question? So then Stephen Miller he's weighing in on the border wall fight. And we're going to listen to the audio in just a second, but I want to tell you guys a funny story about something that happened to Stephen Miller just recently. And I don't, you might have heard a little tale of it, but apparently some protesters decided to twerk their way across D.C. So they danced their way, they twerked their way across D.C. so that they could have the opportunity to call this a twerk protest, maybe make it more fun, I don't know. And then when they got over to his new apartment, because they found out that he'd gotten a new apartment in Washington, D.C., and they wanted to protest it, then they stood outside and they danced and twerked and protested Stephen Miller being there. When he found out about it, he thought it was pretty funny. He didn't seem upset at all. But remember, so twerking and Stephen Miller, like how much further apart could those two things be? He's a bit of, he's kind of nerdy. And I say that with the utmost respect. I enjoy the fact that he's so good at research and that his facts and every bit of information are always so together. So he was on television talking about the border wall, and he weighed in on the actual fight that's going on surrounding this issue. It's number 5.
First of all, the bill that you mentioned in the lead-in would have, in fact, been a total catastrophe and gutted interior enforcement permanently forever. We've already built or have underway over 100 miles of the wall, and this stand that we're taking right now with the entire nation watching, and frankly the whole world watching, is a stand that we think we're going to win. There's beautiful 30-foot rock-solid bollard steel in the ground. You can go down and look at it.
But is it up high and it's going up high?
30 feet tall.
Well,
so unlike the old, well, you have it in El Centro, for example, you have it in the San Diego area and in Calexico and many other areas too. Okay. But that 30-foot barrier.
I'm going there. I'm going to go just do a show from the wall. Maybe I'll sit on the wall when I do it.
Because you see the old shorter barrier that predated this administration. You see people climbing over it and throwing human beings over it. You need that 30-foot height. But I just want to say, I want to get to the real issue at hand. The Democrats are fighting for illegal aliens. Donald Trump is fighting for American citizens. That's what this whole thing's about. You've covered this better than probably anybody for years. You understand this is about sovereignty. It's about working men and women. It's about safe communities. It's about wages, living conditions, quality of life. This is the battle right now, right before our very eyes. We are going to win because Donald Trump is not backing down.
So here's what's awesome about that. I like his enthusiasm. I like the fact that he's planning on, supporting the president and making the commitment to seeing this thing through. We need some excitement surrounding this. And the reason I say that is because it seems pretty hopeless. It seems like the moment to get this done, to strong arm the Democrats, has passed. And instead of us actually seeing something substantial, we're just seeing a lot of talk. I do appreciate that the president has made it pretty clear that he is going to use the military to build the wall if that's what he has to do. And, again, thank God for that. But in the end, the most important thing that has to happen is for the American people to be made aware, all of the American people, even the ones who aren't paying attention, to be made aware that when they give votes to the Democrats, they're giving votes to people who don't care if Americans are killed by illegal immigrants. And that is happening, and that the only way to put a stop to it is to have a border that actually works. Now, I know that people don't like it when you get to speak in that truth, but that's not my concern. It is not my concern whether or not people are happy with truth speaking. My concern is, and always will be, that people are informed and able to make decisions about what it is that they might have to do. And specifically, you have to decide whether or not you're going to support policies that really open us up to more terrorism, open us up to more negative consequences. And it's not just the border, it's also in public schools. No one really talks about the factionism, like the factions that have become really evident in areas where white population is replaced by Hispanics, and the Hispanics outnumber the blacks in the population. And then blacks are being bullied, and kids are, suffering at the hands of gangs and things like that. And traditionally, people try to, I don't want to characterize who the aggressors were or traditionally were. The point is that people are being harmed and neighborhoods are being radically changed. And the assimilation isn't happening at a rate where people can actually get in here and get Americanized. And that's what we want. And it's not because we're xenophobic or we're afraid of people who aren't Americans. It's because we know that when people come to America and they assimilate, that they begin to adopt the same kind of living style, the same kinds of things that we expect out of other Americans. They begin to adopt that too. And once they've been Americanized, they're much less likely to be involved with the criminal justice system and to not graduate from high school or to even require, welfare services. But if we don't spend time assimilating people, then we're not going to have the opportunity for these people to experience that. So they're being robbed of experiencing the American dream, and we're being robbed of having a populace that accurately reflects what so many of us are voting for, what we are believing for, what we're praying for, which is a safe and stable America. The fact that that even has to be explained is kind of crazy pants. It's kind of like people are, it's like we're in Bizarro World, right? It's Bizarro World. That's what it is. So I thought it was good audio from Stephen Miller. He's always an energetic supporter and passionate advocate for border control, and he brings the facts and figures to support it. So 2 more things. First of all, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are talking about teaming up. They posed for a photo together, which is spurring on speculation that they may possibly be the ticket. The tweet is from one of their comms director, and it says, "You just never know who you might run into in D.C." And Kamala Harris is smiling like he's her boyfriend, and he's looking as Joe Biden always looks. He's hugging her from the side. He's looking just happy to be alive. They're both considered potential presidential candidates to challenge President Trump. Biden repeatedly tops polls because he has super high name recognition. He was the vice president. But he's here. It's obvious that they're in front of a building. It looks like the Watergate building. They're standing in front of a building, kind of in the road. Their staffer is in the car, has taken the picture from in the car, and the two of them are squidged down so that they can get into the frame, and they're smiling and laughing. And Rich Jones on Twitter says, "Something tells me this is going to be a historic photo. Please let this be the 2020 ticket. Now that's a team. I'd vote for that ticket." Of course, others who are in the know are calling it for Beto O'Rourke. They say he's definitely going to be the one. And also Andrew Gillum in Florida, who lost that gubernatorial contest. Both he and O'Rourke have met with former President Barack Obama in past weeks, which means they're considering running. And it doesn't mean they met together. They've met individually with the president about this particular thing. I think it's kind of crazy. None of these people have the experience to be the president. Really, honestly. So the last story for this segment, we're going to Chris Christie declining White House Chief of Staff role. And we also have call lines open for you, 866-963-2037. Chris Christie has declined the White House Chief of Staff role. So he was actually in D.C. talking to the president, and he told the president he doesn't want to be Chief of Staff. He doesn't want to replace John Kelly. Now, the New York Times' Maggie Haberman obtained a copy of his statement, and here's what he said. "It's an honor to have the president consider me as he looks to choose who will be the next Chief of Staff for the White House. However, I've told the president that now is not the right time for me or my family to undertake this serious assignment. As a result, I've asked not to be considered for this post." Now, remember, Chris Christie ran for president. And if he'd won, he'd be in the White House right now. So hopefully his wife would have been ready for that. So it sounds like a thanks, but no thanks. Now, President Trump actually considered Christie to be a top contender. And He discussed the job with Chris Christie on Thursday night. I personally have a different take on it. Here's how I see it. I feel like, so there was a lot of contention in the role of press secretary, and they had two people run through that position, and President Trump wasn't happy with either one of them. And then he got a woman in the role, and the woman, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, and she's doing well. She's actually got more control of the situation than any of the previous predecessors had. So I think, this is just me, tossing it out there, that President Trump should have a female chief of staff because he tends to work better with women than with men. They tend to last longer in his administration. And then in addition to that, it would be an opportunity to kind of change things up and have, how you can reorient things. So you can say, I'm going to do something radically different here because I want to reorient the situation. And I think that's what they should do. Honestly, I think that's what the president should do. Now, who is it? Well, I mean, some people have suggested that Nikki Haley could do the job because she's leaving the UN. But the reason she's leaving the UN is because she's been working for 10 years in the public eye and not really had any time off. And she's staying in New York City because her son is going to high school there. So it's highly unlikely that she'll be willing to run down to Washington, D.C. and live there during the week and only come home on the weekends to New York City. I just don't see her doing that. But I believe there's a woman out there who could fill the role. And the reason I'm saying that is not because I buy into that whole gender, like we need more women, this or that, but because of the president's temperament for working with people. He may be able to find someone that he likes that, obviously is a man. I'm not saying that's impossible, but I think a woman would be an interesting choice, and it would be a dynamic change to the environment. Remains to be seen what will happen. So I don't know if you saw this story. This is over at the Christian Post, and this is interesting. So Pastor John Gray recently bought his wife a $200,000 Lamborghini. And when people found out that he'd purchased that, because obviously he works for the church, they pay his salary. When they found out that that had occurred, there was some backlash. So after the backlash, he issued a new video. It's a 23-minute monologue that he broadcast on Facebook Live outside of his church in Greenville, South Carolina. And he did this big thing so that he could say, hey, I'm going to use Ephesians 5. He quoted from Ephesians 5 at the end. He explained that he was inspired to get the posh SUV for his wife in February after they saw a presentation for it at their hotel while attending the NBA All-Star Game in Los Angeles, California. He said, I saw my wife's eyes light up. She said this would be a dream. And that's all she had to say. After gifting his wife the SUV in a lavish celebration last Saturday that left her screaming with abandon, many critics raised concerns that the optics of a pastor indulging in such opulence and wondered if he'd use church funds to finance it. So he answered that. He said, not a nickel, not a penny from this church, relentless church, went towards the gift that I gave my wife. That matters. That's the only thing that matters, because I know, like you know, that there are some pulpit pimps out here who take church money and do the wrong thing. But I work hard for my family, and I tithe and I sow, and I've done it my whole life, and I'll continue to do it. And then he apologized for getting emotional in his defense. He also noted when he made the purchase, he didn't make it as a pastor, but as a husband. Okay. He says, I'm a husband first. Get that in your spirit. Don't confuse with what I do with what I am. He also explained that he's still paying for the Lamborghini because he made a deposit on it in February, and that he worked hard and saved from a variety of income streams, including his second book deal and his Oprah Winfrey Network reality TV show, The Book of John Gray, which is in its 4th season, to pay for the Lamborghini. And then he goes into a bunch of emotional rhetoric about taking his own, God take his life, et cetera, et cetera. He's also an associate pastor at Joel Osteen's Lakewood Church in Houston, Texas. And he says he's tired of people talking about him. All right, when we get back, we're going to have Dave Workman, Second Amendment Foundation. Stay there. This is Just a Minute with Stacey Washington. Every year, the timeline is the same. The weather gets cold, Christmas decorations go up, and public officials start banning the celebration of Christmas. The most recent instance in Nebraska followed the pattern to a T. An elementary school principal decided to ban the colors red and green, Christmas music and trees, ornaments, and actually sang Merry Christmas. After a considerable backlash, she has been placed on administrative leave. Here at American Family Radio, we have a way to push back. Our Keep Christ in Christmas wristbands. They're cute in Christmas colors and are a great way to start friendly conversation about keeping the reason for the season front and center. We don't take 2 weeks off in December for any other reason than the celebration of the birth of Christ. Order your bundle of 10 wristbands today. Call 877-927-4917. That's 877-927-4917. Or order online at afastore.net.
I'm not so certain we have as much time as many of us think. It's high time for the body of Christ to return with a fire lit up under us to proclaiming the truth of God's word, to proclaim the truth of sin and repentance, and not coming from a high, lofty position, but telling the truth as such were some of us. We have to do that. We have to. But what happens is, and I call this first world problem, we have this epidemic of churchianity in America, to where we are far more accepting and far more willing to embrace the trappings of church life, even if they're void of the presence and power and fire of Christ. And I would say to you, just as the Bible says, that we can have a form of godliness while simultaneously, at the exact same time, deny the very power of the gospel.
Tune in to the Hamilton Quarter, weekday afternoons at 5 Central on Urban Family Talk.
This is Fox on Justice, and today we're talking justice that's out of this world.
It's weird. There's nothing here. It's Mars.
There may not be much earthly activity on Mars yet, but one day humans could land and maybe even start a colony there. Scientists and engineers are working through the challenges, but one forward-looking thinker is pondering the legal questions. Marko Kovic, president of a think tank in Switzerland, makes a point that laws that apply to earthbound humans may not work as well millions of miles away. First, he writes, who gets to colonize Mars? A country, a corporation, or some kind of international federation? Then, how would a Martian colony be governed? Would it be subject to the laws of back home or new regulations more suited for extraterrestrial life? And what if the colonists rebel and declare their independence? It could be 1776 all over again. Spacey stuff to think about here on Earth. With Fox on Justice, Hank Weinblum, Fox News.
You can watch a live stream of the show on Facebook or YouTube at Stacey on the Right. Now, back to the show on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Welcome back to the show. That's snazzy music, isn't it? Oh, yeah, let's celebrate. It's Christmas. Merry Christmas to you. I encourage you to say Merry Christmas to people when you're out. They may not be permitted to say it to you first, but most of them are allowed to say it back to you, and it lifts people's spirits when they hear Merry Christmas. Don't buy into the liberal lie that there's something wrong with Christmas. There's not. It's still just as awesome as it has always been, and we can always celebrate it with the same childlike abandon that we've always had, because Jesus is the reason for the season. Yes. Okay. Now it's my pleasure to welcome Dave Workman, Second Amendment Foundation. Thank you so much, Dave, for coming on the show today.
Well, thanks for inviting me. Appreciate it.
So it's wonderful to get to speak to you. First off, there's this kind of reaction going around on social media to the report, 447 pages, the Parkland, Florida Commission and they had a vote 13-1 to include in the commission report that, teachers need to be armed. And that is what is throwing people for a loop. I know the Second Amendment Foundation and other great 2A organizations have been advocating for this for years. And this is the first time we've heard of some outside organizations saying, yes, it's true, this needs to happen. Let's talk about that.
Well, I think it's significant that one of the lawmen on that commission, a sheriff down there, thinks it's a good idea to give people a fighting chance. And the people who are against it, the educators, and then one parent of a student who was killed at that high school, don't like the idea at all. And frankly, that stuns me. And I'm not even sure if it's not irresponsible. You've got to give people a chance to defend those kids. When seconds count, the police are typically minutes away, or in the case of Parkland, they were right outside and didn't go in. When there's lead in the air, you've got to go out there and stop that threat, because lives definitely are at stake. And believe me, we haven't heard the last. In fact, I think we've just heard about the first about this report, because this is just a draft. When the final report comes out, I can imagine some people having headaches over it.
Well, I can too, to be honest with you, Dave. But we're talking about them. The recommendation is not just pass a gun out to every teacher. This initial recommendation is simply that they feel like more than just one or two teachers. You need a decent number of teachers to be trained first and then armed to be able to thwart an attack. That's not actually radical.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, there's really nothing radical about that idea at all. It's been tried and it's being done in other school districts. Nobody's expecting teachers to have to line up and somebody hand them a firearm. That's the myth that the anti-gun crowd wants to create. Nobody's going to force these teachers to do that. But a teacher who wants to volunteer, who has the mindset and the where of it all to embark on that kind of a mission to protect the kids, give the kids in their class a little extra protection. I don't think we should discourage that sort of thing. We've heard all the stupidity about, oh gosh, everybody's going to get shot, the teachers don't know what to do. That's nonsense. These teachers are going through training. There's a great program that's started up in the state of Ohio by the Buckeye Firearms Association. It's taught hundreds, if not a couple of thousand teachers, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Well, you're talking about Faster Colorado?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that is something that I can you tell the listeners about that a little bit? I'm not sure that, I want to say we've had one of the representatives on the program, but it's been quite a while, maybe a year ago or more. And this is something that most people don't even know exists, and it is an outstanding program. They've been training teachers for a considerable amount of time now, and the results have been really great.
Well, yes. The folks who started this are actually in Ohio. In fact, every year for the past, I think it's been 3 or 4 years, there's been somebody from the FASTER program, a guy named Jim Irvine, with the Buckeye Firearms Association, who has given an annual report to the Gun Rights Policy Conference. And it's one of the most engrossing, interesting reports that comes out of that conference. And people around the country who attend this conference go away with the feeling that, hey, that these guys are working outside the box. We've tried everything else. It hasn't stopped. Let's try this. It's a good idea.
Well, and so no one is harmed by the execution of this as let's put it like this. What have we got to lose? Right now, we have random mass shootings occurring in school districts where it's unpredictable because a lot of things went wrong in Parkland. So you could say it is predictable, right, Dave? You could say Parkland was one of the cases that is an anomaly because it was predictable, because the person who executed the shooting was volatile, violent, and in constant contact with law enforcement and, psychotherapy type folks. But everybody dropped the ball.
And you know something, I'm gonna suggest this to your audience because there are a lot of bright people out there listening to this right now. Over the years, we have heard repeatedly the gun control crowd saying, "Oh, we got to ban guns. We got to do this. We got to make a restriction here. We got to do this there. If it saves just one life." Well, I'm going to throw that right back in their faces. If this program results in the saving of just one life, it's worth it.
Just one life, Dave. That's what they're always saying. So can you talk a little bit about what it looks like? Because I think a lot of people would say, well, what you're talking about, teachers, and most teachers that you meet are these sweet, kind-hearted, you know what I mean? It's like, well, you can't imagine a person like that wielding a gun at school or carrying one concealed. But that is just one part of the persona of a teacher, and not every teacher would be perfect for this.
Well, frankly, when I went to school, which was about 1,000 years ago, but in my junior and senior high school classes, we had teachers who were very capable of taking care of themselves and a lot of other people, too. We never had a school shooting anywhere I went, and we had rifle teams at my junior and senior high schools. But, as I mentioned earlier, the teachers with the mindset, with the understanding going into this, what firearms and self-defense is all about, they're way ahead of the curve already. They're going into this with a clear head. They understand the training regimen. They do learn to shoot. They learn to when not to shoot. There's a lot that goes into these programs, up to and including administering first aid to people who've been shot after the smoke clears. And, frankly, we have tried all this other stuff, locked doors. Well, they left the doors unlocked at Parkland. We've tried police on campus, school resource officers, and sometimes they do a real good job. In the case of Parkland, maybe not so much. But having a school resource officer, I know, has paid off in Maryland and in a situation in Colorado a few years ago. We need to get outside the box. Stop, get away from the old ideas that guns are bad, guns are terrible, and people will be irresponsible. That's nonsense. The training is there to guide these teachers, and they're all volunteers or administrators, for that matter. They're responsible people. Otherwise, why would we trust our kids to them?
Well, they are, and so it's fine if people feel like they don't trust certain teachers, but it's not really about whether or not a teacher is your favorite or not, or that you have a good working relationship with them. It's more about whether or not that teacher is willing to submit to training so that they can become qualified and certified to carry concealed in a school building. And the Faster Colorado program, which is just one of the programs that are being used across the country to make this happen, what they're doing is they're evaluating people during this process, and they're training them and giving them the confidence and certitude to be able to carry concealed and to use their firearm to defend themselves and students. And it involves all of that. It's not just, this is how a gun works, this is how you pull the trigger, this is how you load it, now go. It's much more comprehensive than that, right?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, I was a firearms instructor, volunteer, NRA certified for about 35 years, and I've sat through the presentations that they've made at the Gun Rights Conference. I've been really impressed with the detail that the folks who put this together have gone to make this program a success. And frankly, if it spreads across the country even more, I think the school districts that take advantage of that program are probably going to be ahead of the curve, too.
So when we talk about being ahead of the curve, what we're really, really talking about is, obviously, we want people trained. We want them armed responsibly. But we also want there to be a kind of, the peace through strength type of thing, where students who know that there are an unnamed number, so this, you don't know how many, of teachers, school administrators, it might be the janitor, you don't know who it is, who are armed and ready to rumble in case someone comes in shooting. They're not going to come in and shoot up their school, correct?
Well, at least that's the idea, and I haven't heard of a single incident at any one of these schools with armed teachers. And, you know, maybe there's something to that. Likewise, I haven't heard of any incidents on campuses, college campuses, where they let people who are licensed to carry actually carry. You know, the one thing in common, all these school shootings and all the mall shootings, they're all gun-free zones. And you would think that somebody would wake up some morning, pour himself a cup of coffee, and suddenly think, hey, wait a minute, maybe we ought to rethink this. And thanks to the folks at the FASTER programs, whether it's Ohio or Colorado or where else, you know, they're already thinking ahead of that, and they've got the program. Let's give it a try.
And so you were talking about the preliminary nature of this report, and that they're going to, I guess, do some more research before they come out with the final report?
Well, it's my understanding that they're going to review this thing and you know, have some more discussion about it. But at 447 pages, which I think this draft report is, I doubt that they're going to change a lot. And besides, now that the information is out there, you know, I don't think anybody dares to remove the recommendation about arming teachers, because somebody's going to cry foul over that. And, you know, let the report say what it says.
So I'm expecting, so this first round, I haven't heard anything about it on mainstream media, but I'll keep looking. I'm expecting that they'll ignore it or bury it. And then when the final report comes out, if it reflects the same recommendation, that they'll have to have the Parkland kids, the ones who've been commercialized, come out against this plan. Do you see them actually doing this?
I think you're way ahead of the curve here, too. I thought this through immediately when I wrote about it yesterday at Conservative Firing Line, that this is kind of a slap in the face to some of those high school kids that I think they've been co-opted by the gun control movement and turned into nice, happy faces around, you know, media darlings. But nothing that they've said reflects anything different than I've heard from the gun prohibitionists for a long, long time.
I find it horrifying and terrifying and utterly ridiculous that in a country with 400 to 600 million guns, any person would be able to walk into a place where children or women or, you know, men shopping, any person, any human being would be able to walk into a heavily populated place and shoot it up without meeting any resistance. Like, I just think that is the most ridiculous thing. Out of all the ridiculous things, that is one of the most ridiculous. And that's why I love what you guys are doing at the Second Amendment Foundation. I happen to be the 2018 Journalist of the Year from the Second Amendment Foundation, so it is such a pleasure to have you on the show. I hope we can talk again soon. And I hope these people come back out with this report and they stay the course and that they actually make this happen.
I sure look forward to that. I've got 2 of those Journalist of the Year awards, so I'm very proud of those 2, and good for you.
Thanks, Dave. I'm excited about it. I hope to do more, and I certainly, this is a stunning report. I like it. I hope they stick to their guns, and thank you so much for your time today. Merry Christmas and have a great weekend.
Well, Merry Christmas to you, too. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Dave. All right, that's the show. God bless you. Get in the pew this weekend. Bring a friend with you. Go out to brunch afterwards or go home and eat. From the story from earlier. I'm so excited about the weekend because I want to unplug and I want to spend time with our college girl who's back. And I want to encourage you to have a great weekend, and I'll talk to you on Monday.